Okay, great. Thank you, Lucy, for the introduction. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I can see people in the chat from Mexico, from Germany, from Pakistan, from various other places. So thank you for giving up an hour of your time to listen to the session and to participate. This is the description of what I'll be covering today. You may have read it before, but if not, don't worry, because I'll just summarize briefly here what I'm going to be covering. You'll know that this is a session all about life skills and the importance of life skills for students in terms of being able to function effectively in English, but also just generally in life. So we'll be looking firstly at various perspectives on what those key life skills are that our teenage learners need to acquire and develop in order to function effectively once they leave school. Then we'll consider for a little while why those skills are so important. And then we'll look at some practical examples of how we can incorporate them into the classroom in ways that are practical and effective and can be done simply without too much additional preparation for the teacher. So that's what we'll be covering. But first, I'd like to get your thoughts on this topic of life skills. And I'm going to show you 6 statements. And what I'd like you to do in the chat is just think about, do you, broadly speaking, agree or disagree with each of the statements? And in the chat, write either agree or disagree for each of them. Okay, so the first statement is, life skills are more important these days than academic knowledge. Please write in the chat, agree or disagree. Okay, I can see lots of agrees appearing in the chat, mainly agreement here, 1 or 2 disagrees. Okay, that's interesting. Good to hear that you agree that it's an important topic, because that's the topic of the session today. Second statement, so again, disagree or agree in the chat. Broadly speaking, life skills these days are the same as they've always been. Again, please pop your answer into the chat. We've got lots of disagrees showing up. Yeah, that's what I would expect. Clearly, as the world changes, as society develops, there are various things that are causing life skills to be not what they used to be, what students require. The next statement, it's clear to me as a teacher which life skills I need to help my students with, need to help them to develop. So it's clear to me which life skills I need to support my students. Again, if you can type either agree or disagree there. Okay, again, generally there's agreement there, I think. So you're saying that you are now a bit of a mix coming up, so a few disagreeing. So a bit of a mixture here. So some of you clearer than others, maybe, in terms of which are these life skills I need to help my students with. Moving on to the next statement. My students understand, so my students themselves understand which life skills they need and why they are important. Again, agree or disagree. Okay, generally disagree appearing there. I don't think I've seen any agreeing so far with that. So it sounds like your students maybe need a bit of help in terms of understanding what those life skills are and why they need them. Statement number 5. My colleagues and I do everything we can to include life skills in our classroom, the English language classroom. Again, agree or disagree. So we've got mostly agree there. Not sure. Okay, a bit of a mix again here. So sounds like some of you do everything that you can, others may be doing something, but maybe additional ideas would be helpful. And then statement number 6, it's very difficult to develop life skills in the English language classroom. Again, just pop agree or disagree into the chat. Not sure. Agree. Yeah, a bit of a mix here again of agreeing and disagreeing. So some of you thinking it's relatively simple, others that maybe it's a bit of a challenge. So hopefully today's session will help you with that. We'll come back to these statements at the end of the session just to reflect on them again. But just to move on into that first section, I mentioned that we would cover what do we mean by life skills? What are those key life skills that teenage learners need for when they leave school and go into the world of further study or work? Again, a little task for you here before we look at some particular perspectives on this. Can you just pop into the chat either your own definition of what you understand life skills to be, just like a one-line definition or a phrase, or put some examples of life skills in. So we've got things like soft skills appearing here, autonomy, empathy, critical thinking. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, emotional intelligence, okay, communication skills. Cooking is certainly a life skill. Yeah, skills needed to survive in many areas of life. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, very good ideas there in terms of both the definitions and examples of life skills. The kind of things that you've been popping into the chat, things like, in fact, I don't think anyone mentioned creativity, imagination, citizenship, etc. But those are the kinds of things that you'd have been thinking of. If we look at a dictionary definition here for this, we have a skill that is necessary or desirable for full participation in everyday life. It's a dictionary perspective. If we look at how the World Health Organization defines life skills, they say that they are the abilities, the skills that are required for positive behavior, adaptive or flexible behavior that enable individuals to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. So similar to what one of you put in the chat about being able to survive in everyday life. So these are the kinds of things that we're thinking about here. And a number of United Nations organizations, UNICEF, UNESCO, together with the WHO, World Health Organization, tried to answer the question on the screen there. What are those most important life skills? And they identified 10 essential life skills that they understand to be important to well-being and success for everyone, regardless of age, gender, nationality, etc. And we'll look at those shortly. But first, I'm going to tell you a story. And what I'd like you just to think about, you can pop these ideas that you might have into the chat if you like, or just think about them. But as I tell you this story, can you just think about the question there? Which life skills are either in evidence or lacking on the part of the various people who are involved in the story? And this is a story that is a true story, and it's I'm one of the characters in the story. It happened to me about 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago, in Russia, in Moscow. I was there for work. I was there to give a presentation at a conference, or rather, it was at a university, not a conference, but I was giving a presentation. And it was important that I got there on time and that it all went well, obviously. The weather on that particular occasion, because it wasn't the summer, it was actually November of, I think, 2016. So the weather looked a bit more like this in Moscow at the time. But, you know, that's quite normal there at that time of year. So I wasn't worried, went to bed, got up in the morning thinking I'll go down to the hotel reception and I'll find a taxi there in front of the hotel, and I'll take my taxi to where I'm going to give this presentation. I had in mind a nice, you know, normal, modern taxi that would take me smoothly to where I needed to get to. Life is not always like that. And the first taxi on the rank in front of the hotel looked a bit like this one here. But being, you know, quite English and polite, not wanting to refuse that taxi that was standing there waiting for me, I thought, okay, I'll proceed, I'll get in, and I assume that the taxi driver's got a sat nav to help find the address. Unfortunately, in such an old taxi, there wasn't actually a sat nav. And then I was slightly concerned when I showed the address written on a piece of paper to the taxi driver, and he looked completely confused. He then popped out of the taxi and went over to a bunch of other taxi drivers standing nearby and started asking them clearly, where he was meant to be taking me based on the address I'd given him. So there were certain things going on there, communication and collaboration with his colleagues, the other taxi drivers, maybe a certain amount of empathy from them towards him. On my part, maybe a slight lack of critical thinking and decision making, because I decided to continue with the taxi ride with this particular taxi driver. I then was in a situation where I needed to just handle the stress, keep calm, carry on, try and get the guy to understand where he was meant to be taking me. This then potentially progressed into keep calm, but at the same time, maybe panic. So coping with stress was one of the life skills that I was needing to delve into at the time. But then keep calm and embrace change. So thinking about decision making and that point in the WHO definition about adaptive behavior. So being flexible, having a flexible mindset and being able to change your plans. So what I did was basically pay him for the short journey he'd already taken me on. I hopped out into the snow looking for another taxi. There were no taxis that were free to be found anywhere. I hailed down one or two, they were busy. So I was basically in this situation, one of the main avenues going through Moscow in the snow. I was standing on one side of the road. Then I spied on the other side of the road a big hotel with lots of taxis standing outside it. So, okay, creativity and initiative, a couple of other life skills. I thought I'll just dash across this snowy road and catch one of these taxis from outside the hotel. Then it dawned on me that the road was pretty big. It was very snowy. The cars were going very fast. So I started to implement a little bit of critical thinking at that stage, made a sensible decision. I didn't take my life in my own hands and dash across the snowy road. I stood where I was. I hailed down a few more taxis. They were all fully booked and occupied. Eventually, a taxi pulled over and a guy who was actually a passenger already in the taxi who was going somewhere wound down the window, and he must have noticed from the way I was expressing myself, not in much Russian, I don't speak much Russian, but somehow I was communicating to him my desperation to get to where I needed to get to. And he then showed, this isn't a photo of him, obviously it was snowy at the time, but he showed empathy in understanding my desperation. He very generously gave up his own taxi, stepped out into the snow, allowed me to get into the taxi. The driver took me to my destination. I got there a few minutes late, apologized, demonstrated a few social skills, and got on with the presentation. And things worked out okay in the end. It would have been a lot easier if I'd had language as well that I could have used, but using social skills enabled me, and life skills enabled me to get to where I needed to get to eventually. So that story, the reason I tell it is just to evidence this 90-10 principle, which you may have heard of. It basically is based on the fact that we're not in a position where we can decide the actions of others most of the time, but we can influence them by the attitude that we take. And the 90-10 element of this is that life, as this quote says, is 10% what happens to you, things that you can't necessarily influence. But then what you can influence is the 90%, which is how you then react to what has happened to you. So that's where the life skills come in. It's that 90% of achieving a successful outcome by having those life skills that allow you to react in the best possible way for a positive outcome. So if we go back again into that UNICEF, UNESCO, and WHO research and the 10 most important life skills that they identified, I'm going to show them on the screen now. But unfortunately, someone has popped them into an anagram state and they're all jumbled up. So there's a task for you. Can you identify what these 10 most important life skills are according to these United Nations organizations. Can you write them into the chat? Here we've got empathy, self-awareness. Yeah. Keep going in, pop them in any order. Helping with emotions, we've got there, critical thinking. Yeah. Okay, decision making. Yeah, creative thinking, problem solving. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. So here they are, unjumbled. So we have self-awareness, empathy, critical thinking, etc. I won't go through the whole list, but these are the 10 most important life skills as defined by those organizations. The soft skills needed to navigate and succeed in life, as was mentioned earlier. But the soft skills needed to navigate and succeed in life, Mr. Skeptical appears here and says, but okay, life, what do you mean by life? And of course, that's a matter of perspective, perhaps. But what we're talking about here, of course, is skills for modern life. There's a phrase, same humans, new world, and therefore new skills being necessary. So going back to that question at the beginning, you know, are life skills the same these days as they've always been? Clearly they're not, because the world is changing around us, and what we and our students need to be able to cope with effectively is also changing. So we're talking about skills for modern life, skills for the information age. The information age, also known as the computer age or the digital age, which began really in the 1990s with the advent and the rise of the internet, and typified by, you know, the kind of increasingly rapid shift that we're seeing away from traditional industries, economies, and other areas of life based around manipulation of data and information in various forms, the creation and use and, you know, supremacy really of new technologies in terms of dictating how we operate in the world. So the information age being key in terms of the changes that are happening and increasingly swiftly in terms of the kinds of life skills that are necessary. This kind of information society that we all live in now is, if you like, a double-edged sword. It's something that creates many new opportunities for work, for learning, for various other things, but it also creates new challenges and new risks, and it creates a need for new skills. So you'll be familiar with the term 21st century skills. We have the 4 C's, we have literacy skills, and we have life skills, or those soft skills. You're probably familiar with the 4 C's. The definitions are listed there. The words are gaps. Another little task for you to do in the chat box. Can you pop into the chat the 4 C's? What are those 4 words that start with the letter C? You can pop them into the chat. Okay, and here we have them on the screen now for you. So critical thinking, in other words, being able to objectively analyze and evaluate information and situations, creativity, collaboration, and communication. Then we have 21st century literacy skills rather, and broken down into 3 areas. We have information literacy. So this is about being able to locate, identify, find information efficiently, quickly, and to use it well. We have media literacy, which is the ability to analyze, think about stories that you might find in the media, that students will find in the media, and assess them for credibility and for accuracy, to be able to check them against other potential sources, etc. And then technology literacy, which is being able to, within a digital world, within a digital environment, to find, assess, and communicate the kind of information that is necessary using the digital tools that are available. Then we have the softer life skills as they're defined here. So things like flexibility, being able to change plans, hop out of one taxi into another, for example, in that story I told you earlier. Being able to lead others, being able to lead a team, motivate a team to achieve goals, so leadership. Initiative, which is that ability to self-start, to be able to get started independently without others having to push you. So that's important for our students to acquire that kind of mindset where in their studies, but then later in the world of work, they can do that. Productivity, this is about being able to stay focused on the task in hand, despite the multiple distractions that are always constant really these days. Nearly everyone is almost constantly online when they're working, potentially when they're studying as well. And it's obviously very tempting for students to pick up the phone and get distracted by the multitude of other things that are available to them being online. There was some interesting research done actually in terms of the impact of students having a phone next to them on the desk while they're doing their homework. And this research found that students who had their own phone there were obviously likely to become distracted by the phone. But even having someone else's phone next to them while they were working distracted them. And even if they knew that that phone was turned off, so there was no way that they could actually use the phone for any particular purpose, it was found to be a distractor, and that it distracted them from what they were doing. So this kind of constant distraction is a real issue these days, and being able to stay focused on a task is really important. And then the last one here, social skills, so being able to basically develop and foster and nurture good relationships by being able to communicate well, communicate effectively, and understand other people, having emotional intelligence, etc. So that was really all about what those life skills are, the most important life skills that we need to help our students to develop. We'll look now at why they are so important in life, and I've touched on this obviously to some degree already. But if we imagine in the English language classroom, possibly typical scenario where we have the teacher and they're going through verb forms, they've got the infinitive, the past simple, and the past participles here, and they might be doing a drill or something to go through these different verb forms, and then the student there with the cap on pipes up with a different perspective and says, "Excuse me, miss, but how will this that we're doing now prepare us for a rapidly changing world of artificial intelligence, algorithms, fake news, and information overload?" Okay, fine, it's academic knowledge, it's linguistic knowledge, but we need those life skills as well to help us to cope with the world as it is, and as it is constantly changing. So that's a very fair point that the kid there has made. And again, going back to the idea that academic achievement is possibly these days less important relative to being able to acquire and boost and develop those critical life skills. There's a quote here from Dr. Spencer Kagan, professor of psychology and education at the University of California, Berkeley, saying that academic achievement runs a distant second to the need to boost life skills. You may or may not agree with that particular view. You may feel that there's a sort of balance in terms of the importance of the two. But certainly, and based on your answers to that question early on in this session, most of you seem to be agreeing that actually life skills are more important than academic knowledge these days. Not that academic knowledge is not also important, but life skills are really critical. Some of the key drivers for the importance of life skills overall, the fact that the world is constantly and increasingly quickly changing and becoming increasingly complex in a variety of different ways, when you think about technology, the environmental challenges that we all face, economic considerations, the future of learning and how that may change and develop over time in terms of the context in which learning happens, the use of digital tools, etc., and indeed the future of work, and what is the future of work going to look like for our students and for all of us. Going back to that point about same humans but new world, therefore new skills being required, and the kind of skills that it's thought workers in future, in the not too distant future, will need in order to not just survive but to thrive in life. There was a recent report just from a couple of months ago, January of this year, from the World Economic Forum, their Future of Jobs report. And some of the highlights that I've picked out here are that nearly half of employers expect the key employability skills to change within the next 5 years by 2030, that there's going to be a growing focus on continuous learning, an increased importance attached to things like flexibility, that flexible mindset, creative thinking, and resilience. And unsurprisingly, technological skills will grow in importance more rapidly than any other. But the real key thing here is about those skills are going to be rapidly shifting and changing, and therefore that requires a flexible mindset, requires a creative mindset, as well as the ability to use those technological tools. So if you think about technological skills will grow in importance more rapidly than any other, you may be familiar with this kind of illustration of the evolution of the human race, and the end point potentially, or maybe even the current situation, the guy on the right or the girl on the right sitting there embedded in their technology. And this may lead you to think, the future of collaboration, does it look something like this, where everyone's sitting at their workstations remotely collaborating, and what are the implications there for the kind of soft skills that might be needed if this is the future? I think I would argue that that is not the future. The importance of teamwork is paramount. These days, research says that over 70% of jobs involve membership of a team. Effective teamwork does require those soft skills. And effectively, in today's world, life skills and teamwork skills are employability skills. And collaboration using digital tools does not look like this. Most of the time, it looks more like this, where still that face-to-face interaction is really key. And that's where those soft skills really come into play. And increasingly, and going back to the point about complexity, increasingly it's the case that teams don't just work within a top-down vertical organizational structure where they work within one team and that's kind of it. Things are becoming more complex in that sense as well. So, the traditional top-down structure that we have here, where I'm not saying this is something that we have moved away from in all contexts and in all organizations, but this is a bit more old-fashioned, a bit more traditional, where you have those key relationships between managers and the people who report to them, and it's very hierarchical. And things have moved towards a less rigid structure, where teams work within their teams, but it's still within a relatively hierarchical organization. But increasingly, we're ending up with this kind of scenario. There's an expression, team of teams, where we have teams that need to work not only within their team, but across teams to get things done. So a less hierarchical, more complex setup, which is very effective in terms of getting things done, but does require very good communication and does require very good life skills. So, you know, this is the way the world of work in many cases has been shifting, just re-emphasizing the need for those effective life skills. So, in summary, so far, in terms of what we've been looking at, in terms of what those life skills are, why they're important, I would summarize so far by saying that, you know, however you define them, life skills are important for success in life. Academic knowledge, academic achievement is also important, but life skills are really critical. There are various frameworks. I've showed you a couple of them that define what life skills curricula could look like, but they all kind of have their own perspective. There's no definitive list. It's more a case of picking and choosing to have the framework that you then work within that's going to best meet the needs of your students. No single framework completely comprehensive, as it says there. And also it's really important to remember that, you know, no two classes, no two students, indeed no two teachers, no two teaching contexts, learning contexts are identical. And therefore there is going to be a bit of sort of selection that's needed in terms of finding the right framework and the right kind of curricula to cover in terms of those life skills and what to include. But if we think about the implications of what I've been looking at so far, what can we do as teachers? It may leave you feeling hopeful and optimistic, or it may leave you feeling, you know, in this kind of context, maybe it's a bit of a challenge in terms of how do I address this? How do I help my learners to understand what they need? How do I find the right kind of materials and approaches and techniques to help them in the English language classroom to also be developing right from the beginning, if possible, at a low level, those really critical life skills. So we'll look at one or two simple, practical and effective ways of doing this. I'll be showing you examples from a new series for lower secondary that you may be familiar with, options from Helbling. So the examples I'll show you come from that series. And the first point I would make is that while no particular specific framework, for example, the ones I've shown you, necessarily covers everything, it is important to have a framework in mind, a framework that fosters those skills for lifelong learning. And these are the areas that we cover within options. So covering the kind of key life skills that I showed you earlier from that United Nations research: critical thinking skills, social and emotional learning, imagination and creativity, digital skills, communication skills, collaboration, research skills that's related to media literacy, information literacy, and then global learning in terms of intercultural understanding. So having a framework in mind, it doesn't have to be this particular one, obviously, but having a framework in mind is important so that you're consciously thinking of the areas that you want to cover with your students based on what they're going to need. Secondly, a few ingredients for success that I would suggest. They're listed here as gapped words. They all, well, not all of them, most of them begin with R. Little task for you again. What are the gapped words? Can you pop them into the chat there? Okay, yeah. Realistic, practical, realistic. Yeah, fun. Absolutely. Yeah, someone's got all of them there. Thank you. Okay, good. So you're getting the idea there, and I'd pick out a couple of them. The last two there, making it fun but making it practical. life skills don't have to be sort of deadly serious and boring. They can be made fun, and they need to be practical. They need to be something that students can then use, in a practical way once they get out there into the real world. So we'll look at examples of how we can approach this. And we're going to look first in the area of digital skills. So I've chosen this one partly because of that point about technological skills are the area that's going to become more important more quickly based on that World Economic Forum report. We include it obviously in options, and then we're going to look at an example here based around the topic of posting reviews on social media. And we're going to look at life skills. I said that they can be fun. They can also be tasty. We're going to look at them in the context of pizza. And how are we going to do that, you might be thinking. I'll show you. Here we have an English teenager, nice role model for the students to interact with via the video that I'm going to show you. And Jamie has a real fondness for pizza. And he likes not only going to pizza restaurants and eating pizza, maybe getting a takeaway and bringing it home, but he also, as you know, we all do when we like something, I think we have a tendency to maybe have a look online and see what kind of reviews there are for whether it's a film we like, a book we like, a restaurant that we like, a recipe, whatever. So he's got a particular pizza restaurant in his town that is his favorite. It's called Luigi's, nice Italian name for the pizza restaurant. And he goes in and he sees that there are lots of nice reviews here. And this particular pizza restaurant that is his favorite has got 4.5 out of 5 stars as an average. And nearly everyone, as you can see there on the left, is giving Luigi's a 5-star review. So Jamie naturally feels quite good about this because it's also his favorite restaurant. And I'll show you one or two of these reviews here. So, best pizza in town. I eat lunch here every Wednesday. Try a new pizza every time and they're all delicious. A must try, so yummy, perfect pizza. I went to Luigi's for the first time last week and wow, the pizza's perfect and so is the price. So lots of really good reviews. So Jamie is reading these and thinking, great, I also feel the same. Then he notices, you'll have seen on that previous screen here, down here at the bottom, there's a very small number of 1-star reviews for some reason, which sounds slightly suspicious. So he sees that a guy called Mickey M has left a review saying, worst pizza ever, only 1 star. And then another one, he seems to have gone back, even though he really didn't like the place. Another 1-star review, yuck, terrible pizza, I couldn't eat it, don't go there. So this leaves Jamie wondering, and how do you think, these are questions you'd be asking your students at this point in time. How do you think Jamie feels about this, given that he's now noticed these 1-star reviews from Mickey M? Secondly, after the initial reaction of the emotional reaction, how does he feel about this? What does he then think about it? So engaging those critical thinking skills beyond that first emotional reaction. He starts thinking, why did Mickey M actually write these negative comments? Maybe something fishy is going on here in the pizza restaurant. And then thirdly, after that initial emotional reaction of how he feels, then what does he think? What does he then do? How does he react to what he's discovered in terms of these 1-star reviews from Mickey M? So I'm going to show you a video. It's a video vlog from Jamie, where he's talking about what's happened here. And there are these 3 questions for you to think about in terms of how do you think, or how does Jamie feel about this? Can you listen out also for why did Mickey M actually write these negative comments? and then what does Jamie do as a result? What's his reaction? Okay, so I'm going to show you a video. Think about those questions. I'm just going to come out of the slideshow now to go into the Helbling Media app, which hopefully you can see on your screen there. And these are all the options, products that I've got in the app here. I've downloaded some of them when I was online earlier, so that I could use these offline if I wanted to in the media app. I'm going to go into the videos here, and this is a Learning for Life video. It's about posting reviews on social media, and I'll play you Jamie talking about the situation. So focus in on his feelings, his thoughts, and what he then does.
Hello, I'm Jamie. Welcome to my world. And today I want to introduce you to... Guys, I love pizza. I want to eat it every day, but my mum says...
No, it's not good for you.
Anyway, this is a pizza slice from my favourite pizza restaurant. It's so good. The restaurant is called Luigi's. Yesterday, I googled Luigi's. I wanted to see if it was still open. It was. I asked Mum to order pizza, but she said...
No.
Then I saw that you can leave reviews on the website. So I checked out the reviews. Many of them were positive. But I noticed there was one guy called Mickey M. He left a review every week, and all the reviews were very negative. Terrible pizza. I couldn't eat it. Or, worst pizza ever. I started checking out other pizzerias around here. Some got very good reviews, some did not. And for all the pizzerias, there were comments from Mickey M, just like the ones I told you about. He also wrote things like disgusting or terrible toppings. What was wrong with the guy? Why does he go to pizzerias? Does he even like pizza? Not one positive review. Who was that guy? And then, suddenly, ta-da! I saw a restaurant that was called Mickey's Place. I checked it out. It was a pizza place. I clicked on reviews. All of them were bad. But there was one good one. And guess who wrote it? Right. Mickey M. And you could also see a picture of the owner. Guess who it was? Right. Mickey M. Maybe it's a good idea if I checked out Mickey's Place. Don't think so. So what do you think of my vlog? Let me know. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll just go back into the slideshow now again. Okay, so hopefully you can see the slides again. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, nice comments there, cool video, pretty interesting. Yeah, funny video, funny teenager. And we've got obviously a few of these in each level of options. But the serious learning point here, apart from making it fun, making it engaging by having this kind of teenage role model really that your learners can engage with via the video, get to know via the video. There's a serious point here, as I mentioned, helping your learners even at quite a low level here, sort of A2 plus B1, go through that process with Jamie of that emotional reaction, which is natural often to all of us when we first come across something that we don't like, but then remembering that we need to think about things, engage our brains, engage in critical thinking, think about why, why is this guy writing these negative comments? And then actually, what does Jamie do? He does something intelligent. He goes and he has a look for other pizza places, and he finds that Mickey M has his own pizza restaurant, and therefore he is leaving bad reviews for the competition and leaving very positive reviews for himself. So in a nice, fun, accessible way, taking students through that process of feeling, thinking, doing, which they can then replicate for themselves when they encounter this kind of situation in real life. Okay, so that was the My Pizza Problem. We've looked at the video. So as I mentioned, we have these vlogs, video blogs from a teenage perspective with various presenters, various British teenagers who talk about things that are interesting and relevant to them and to your learners. We do a bit of language work. So here on the topic of fake news or things that are not true, a little bit of language work there, and then giving students the opportunity to practice those critical thinking skills after they've watched the video. So you have a little activity there where you have a couple of quotes. So the first one, number one there, what a wonderful book, one of the best romantic novels I know, buy it, read it. And the question here for the students to think about is, who do they think wrote that social media comment about that book? Was it a reader, genuinely? Was it maybe the author, maybe even the author's mum, an author, a friend of the author, or option C, we can't be sure? And the answer to this one obviously is we can't be sure, because there's no real way of knowing whether it was the author that went in and left a positive comment about their own book in the way that Mickey M was leaving it about his own pizza restaurant. Whereas the second one, second quote here, second review, stay at our hotel in Amherst. We offer you 3 nights for the price of 2. Contact the Amherst Star Hotel. And the question for the students is this the hotel owner? Is it a guest? Or we can't be sure. And it's clear from the way this is phrased and the content that's within it that it's the hotel owner that's leaving this. So just helping learners in a nice, light, simple way that will be practical and effective to think about the difference in the content of these social media comments, and think about who has written them and what is their motivation. Then taking it a bit further within the same lesson, within the context of the video that I showed you, giving learners real practical tips that can help them. So still on the topic of posting reviews on social media, we have 6 tips here, and they've been split into 2 parts each, and there's a task. You can try this yourselves now if you like. Can you match the pairs? Write them in the chat. In terms of the first one, for example, use respectful language. Don't say anything that. What would be the second half of that piece of advice from A, B, C, D, E, or F? Yeah, we got 1E. So yeah, don't say anything that you wouldn't say to a person face to face. So like a good, practical, sensible tip for students when it comes to interacting on social media. Remember that there's another person on the end of your comment. Remember that you shouldn't really say anything remotely that you wouldn't be prepared to say to them if you were talking to them face to face. So these kinds of very practical tips. Also things like, we all know that there are people out there who write in capital letters a lot of the time, but that comes across as if you're shouting at the person who's reading it. So these kinds of practical tips for students so that they can really bear these in mind. Then it's important to give them an opportunity to reflect on these. So they could work in pairs and think about these various tips, like, don't write in capital letters, because when people see that, they think you're shouting at them. Which of these things are you good at already? Do you remember not to do that? Which of these do you want to improve? Make a mental note of the ones that you want to try to keep working on so that you get better. So that's an opportunity for students to think about, what they can currently do, what they want to get better at. And then moving on into a bit more practice, we give them 3 example social media comments, in this case about a fun fair in London. And the task for them here is to read the comments that were left by visitors to this fun fair, left on the website as reviews, compare each of these comments to the 6 tips. So again, very practical, and decide, which of these comments, if any, are actually good comments that they should try to imitate when they do this kind of thing themselves. And then they have to say why, or why they're good or why not. And you can see in this particular case, only the first one is the kind of comment that we would want to encourage our students to make, where it's quite factual and fair and positive in this particular case. Whereas the second one from Alex Jones, we all had fun, only Lizzie wasn't happy as always, she's so annoying, so being critical of a particular person. And then in Tom's third comment there, lots of capital letters, and also it's really negative and just very subjective. So the point here is that we're going from that video context with a nice example, and then moving into those practical tips, and then examples that students can consider and think about, plus the opportunity for them to reflect on what they're good at and what they want to improve. Then after all of that, we then give them an opportunity for further practice of this area. In this case, in terms of digital skills, it's still the social media review. Project work is a really effective way of incorporating various life skills. It fosters a range of practical skills in the area of what we could call learning for life. We've got collaboration, we've got creative thinking, creativity, we've got digital skills, we've got communication. And this project here for them to do in groups is there's a new shopping center that has just opened, and they have to write a social media review, including 4 positive and 4 negative comments, because obviously they don't always have to be positive, but they have to be appropriate. And they use those tips that we saw here to help them to create their review. Then for potentially fast finishers, maybe not all students will get to this point, but it's there if they do manage to get the review completed, they make a video review and they use the information they've created in terms of those positive and negative comments and show it to the class. So a nice project there that will involve communication and collaboration, creativity, etc., plus putting those practical tips into practice. So ingredients for success, I've popped these back in here because I didn't show you all the answers previously. But here just to list them. So make it relevant to students and their interests and the kind of things that they're going to actually need to learn to do in terms of life skills. Make it realistic for them. So the kind of activities that I showed you there, hopefully you can see that, even at quite a low level, they're the kind of thing that students can be dipping their toes into the area of developing life skills with a relatively low level of English. Make it reflective so that they reflect on what they themselves currently do and how they might want to change that or improve it. Make it fun and practical, as I mentioned, and make it regular. So I'll come back to that point in a minute. This is just to show you the page from level 3 of options where this particular learning for life video occurs, and the activities that I showed you that all occur within that same lesson, starting with the video and leading to the project task at the end. But that point about making it regular, it's no use doing this, once a year, a couple of times a year. So we have this on a regular basis in each level of options, these learning for life lessons. And we have a variety of different vloggers, British teenagers with their vlogs covering different areas that cover different areas of life skills. But within that framework that I showed you in terms of these areas that are on the screen there. So we do this pretty regularly through each level of the course. That particular example was one complete lesson. It was the whole page that covered learning for life or life skills. But it doesn't always have to be a complete lesson, obviously. It can be little and often, and it's useful if it's done in a kind of little and often way. It can be very, helpful in terms of students regularly thinking about these ideas. So this is just an example of how it's done in one of the levels of options with just a short speaking activity where there are these tricky situations. For example, you lent your laptop to a friend, they broke it, they've just given it back to you and it's completely unusable because it's broken. So, the question here for the students is, what would you feel? Maybe your first reaction, that first emotional reaction, then what would you think? And then what would you do in these situations? So hopefully, while they may feel really kind of annoyed or disappointed or whatever to start with, they'll think, well, this other person didn't mean to break my laptop. They also have feelings. So how am I going to react? I'm going to react in a way that creates a positive outcome. That's what this is all about. And that second question here, what could you do to get a positive result? And various scenarios here that are shown where students can go through this process of thinking, okay, how do I feel? What would I then think? And what would I then do to get a positive result? Another little example, again, not a whole lesson, but this is just a simple reading text. It's not the whole text, it goes on a bit below the screen. This is from options students but one, so kind of A1 plus kind of level. So quite a basic level of English, but you can still introduce elements of life skills in this kind of reading activity. In this case, it's about emotional intelligence and managing your feelings. So the text is all about learning to manage your feelings. We all have feelings, girls have feelings, boys have feelings, teachers have feelings, etc. Good to have positive feelings, etc. But what can you do when you're angry? And there are tips here like count to 10, rip up paper, pop bubble wrap, etc. So kind of fun but practical. And not only the text, but also the comprehension activity for the reading skills can also focus in on this life skill, in this case, emotional intelligence and managing your feelings. So we have questions, true, false questions like, boys have no feelings. Right? That's going to get them thinking when they're doing the reading comprehension. Is that true or not? Of course, it's not true. It's good to have happy feelings. It's difficult to manage negative feelings, etc. So also the comprehension task focusing in on the emotional side of things here. And then going on and having a follow-up activity where, for example, they look at these tips in blue, count to 10, rip up paper, etc. And they choose the ones that they think are most useful. They come up with their own ideas, etc. We also have in options various other texts, a range of texts covering, sparking students' curiosity about the world, so helping with intercultural understanding, understanding people from other cultures. That's a really important life skill. Then we have other texts that help to engage students as citizens of the world who have agency and an active role to play when it comes to facing the issues that face us, the environment, etc. Then also in terms of promoting intercultural understanding, curiosity and respect towards other cultures, we have culture lessons that also deal with that kind of area. So it's a range of things that we provide. There's those video lessons like the Jamie pizza one, that's a whole lesson. Little activities like the speaking one I showed you, reading texts, and then pages like these, the culture lessons, the SDG lessons, etc. So we take it seriously, the development of life skills, learning for life. We take it seriously in options. Just coming back to those statements here at the end, and just to reflect on them briefly again, the ones that I showed you at the beginning. A couple of thoughts from me. Life skills are more important these days than academic knowledge. You may or may not agree with that, but I think it's clear that they are both important. They're not the same life skills these days that are required as used to be the case because the world is changing. And then skipping down to the last one, it's very difficult to develop life skills in the English language classroom. Potentially it can be difficult, but it's for that reason that within Options we've wanted to create this range of resources that will be practical, simple, effective, that you can use with your students to, from the very beginning at a very low level, get them thinking about life skills, get them thinking about the things that are going to be important to them, so that when they go out there into the real world, university and the world of work, they can not only survive but actually thrive out there and navigate life and achieve positive outcomes. So that's what it's all about, really. More ideas like these, as I mentioned, from Options. If you'd like to have a look at the interactive brochure, you can scan on the QR code and you'll find all the details about the course. It's not just a life skills course, I should say. It's got a strong life skills syllabus strand, but it's a general English course that covers all the syllabus areas: grammar, vocabulary, functional language, core skills, etc. So that's that. Thank you very much for participating, for listening, for being active in the chat. It's always nice to see you participating. I think we're pretty much just over time, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Feel free to pop them into the chat. Otherwise, if there are no questions, then let's click onto the very last slide. You can get more information at the Helbling website as well. There's the email address. And wish you a pleasant rest of the day. And thank you again for joining. And I hope you found it useful. And if you are using or use Options in future, I hope you find the material helpful.